Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over my updated Paldea Evolved tier list. Now, Paldea Evolved has been around for about a week, and it has completely shaken up the competitive Pokemon TCG metagame. With upcoming tournaments like the North American International Championships, it's going to be important to make sure that you stay on top of the metagame. So today, we're going to be going over my tier list. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It's the best way to help me out as a creator. Shout out to Chien as well for making this tier list, makes it easier for me. And we have tier S, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. Most things will most likely be in that tier 1, 2, and 3, but there might be a deck or two that makes it into that tier S, or unfortunately into that tier 4. So let's hop into it. We're going to start off with some of the brand new decks, specifically as I know most of you kind of want to see exactly where those are, shaping up in the format. So that being said, we're going to start off here with Chien. Chien is a deck that has been getting tons of talk recently, arguably the most hyped up card aside from Iono in the brand new set Paldea Evolved, and I think it's a pretty strong deck. But as of right now, I think it is a solid tier 2 deck. The biggest problem with this deck is consistency. One, oftentimes when you go first, you pretty much just don't do anything because you don't necessarily have lots of powerful draw support on that very first turn. And just how your deck is kind of constructed, you oftentimes just draw pass, which is one of the big issues with it, especially since it's an evolution-based deck. You can't really afford to have those slow early turns, as you oftentimes need time to be able to set up things like that Back's Caliber. However, when it does get set up, it is incredibly powerful, but I do think it is currently the glass cannon deck in the standard format. When it gets going, it's almost unstoppable. However, getting to that point is kind of difficult at times. So we're going to put it at tier 2 as of right now. I think we're really going to need a list to be refined to be able to set up as consistently as possible, or I do think that this deck is going to struggle out of the gate. Kind of like Gardevoir, almost in a way where Gardevoir was always viewed as the deck that had almost unlimited potential. However, no one was really able to optimize the list. Now I think that it's kind of the same with Chien, where once people kind of figure out the list, I think it definitely will move up into that tier 1. However, as of right now, with how lists are being constructed, I do think the deck is a little bit too inconsistent, but it's still good in general. Going into, I guess, some of the other new-ish type decks, we have Lugia, which is not necessarily a new deck. However, it does contain the colorless type attackers. I think this deck is really, really strong as of right now. I'm not necessarily sure if it's better than the single strike version. I think the single strike version has a little bit of a better matchup spread and power level. However, the colorless version is definitely nothing to scoff at. Being able to use that therapeutic energy to consistently attack with the Thumping Snorlax is very, very good. You also have cards like Weird Ear in the deck as well, which can deal tons of damage towards the end of the game. Jet Energy is fantastic in countering things like Articuno or any type of boss stall strategy, which sometimes Lugia can struggle with, as it does run out of energies occasionally. So I think this deck has all the tools it needs to be successful. However, the power level is much weaker than the single strike version, which is a big reason as to why I think it is at tier 2. Having Squawkability is really, really nice. Definitely a good inclusion in these Lugia variants. So I think the deck is still respectable in general. Moving throughout some of the other decks here, we have Wo-Chien Fortress. I think this deck is a tier 4 or 3 deck, probably towards bottom of tier 3. When it gets set up, it's pretty strong. However, in this format, there's a lot of draw support that is easy to put on the field before they do the Fortress explosion into either Iono or Roxanne strategy, which means that if they just draw out of it once, your board state typically falls apart, as your Pokemon don't necessarily have too much HP as well. So I think that's a big reason as to why this deck isn't necessarily going to be as powerful as a lot of the other ones. But if you do get it set up and you do get the crazy wombo combos, it's a pretty fun deck. So we'll put this at tier 3 as of right now. It's respectable, but I do think it has some problems right now. Moving on through some of the other decks, we have Wings of Unity. The biggest problem with Wings of Unity is one, consistency. It doesn't have an insanely powerful draw engine, and also the power level of Pokemon has gone so far up. Back in the day when decks like Night March or Vespiquen were tier 1 decks, Pokemon had a lot less HP, and now we're dealing with Pokemon with 300 plus HP. Mad Party as well, you really had the ability to kind of explode on that first turn and hit for 200 plus, where Wings of Unity doesn't necessarily have that consistent of a turn 1 explosion where you can do that much damage. It's okay, but I definitely think it's going to be tier 4 as of right now. It's a really fun rogue deck though, and if someone's able to come up with a list that consistently hits big numbers in those early turns, then it could potentially be really, really good. But as of right now, we're going to put it at tier 4. Moving to Ting Lu. Ting Lu is a very interesting deck right now. I think it does very well against decks like Chien Pao. It does okay versus some of the Lost Box variants in Mew. However, Lugia is kind of that big problem matchup, and I do think Gardevoir can also cause some issues for you if they're just able to establish one Pokemon. But I do think that it is still a decent deck. I think this deck is better than people give it credit for. Its ability shutting off all non-EX's abilities that have damage counters on it is actually pretty good, and then Koraidon is a great support system to be able to power up Ting Lu. I think this deck is actually better than people give it credit for. I think we'll put it at the middle of tier 2 as of right now. It might even be a little bit better than Chien Pao right off the gate, just because it's a little bit easier of a deck to build and has a pretty set forward strategy and what it needs to do every single game, which typically bodes very well at the beginning of formats. Typically, players like to play safe or play very basic, simple strategies that are consistent and able to be pulled off like all the time, and that's something that Ting Lu can actually do pretty efficiently. So we'll put Ting Lu at tier 2. The biggest problem is the Lugia matchups. Lugia matchups are very bad. You might be thinking, oh, but you can damage the Lugia to prevent something like that Summoning Star. Well, the issue with that is that they can boss around it and then Summoning Star, or they can use something like the Radiant Serena to heal off the damage to then use something like Summoning Star. So you do have plenty of issues as of right now, which I guess is the unfortunate thing. Lugia with Zero Aura, kind of just like the box version. I don't necessarily think this is too powerful, but anything with Lugia should probably be tier 3 as of right now. Pretty interesting deck. I haven't necessarily put a whole lot of testing into it, but I don't think it's going to be super high up there. Moving throughout some of the other lists, some of the other cards, we're going to go over the 2 Gardevoir variants. Now, this is both going to include the Reversal Energy. This is going to be the 1 tier S deck as of right now. Gardevoir with Reversal Energy is absolutely insane. Just being able to attack with the Shining Arcana Gardevoir more often is just really good, because I guess the biggest problem with attacking with Shining Arcana Gardevoir, for quite some time, is that it sometimes is pretty difficult to ramp up to being able to do enough damage, as you can't damage yourself more than 6 times, as you can't knock yourself out with Gardevoir's ability Psychic Embrace, which is the one big issue with this deck that I think was holding it back in some respects. But now, since that you have the brand new energy, it's pretty much just a plus 90 for the Radiant, or for the Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and since you do fall behind typically in games because you are a stage 2 deck, that's a little bit slower naturally, so you are going to lose things like potentially that Mew early on. It just kind of allows you to burst back into the game to then finish with things like Zacian V. So also getting Super Rod is really important as well for Gardevoir. So yeah, it deserves a spot in tier S. It's absolutely incredible. The Mewtwo V Union one I just think is worse. It's still incredibly powerful. It still has the brand new energy, Reversal Energy as well, but I do think it's just not as good as the other one. Still though, just having Reversal is just so powerful. Also Super Rod as well, and Mewtwo V Union is pretty decent with all the Lost Box decks that are kind of running around in the standard format. And also, if decks start to play things like Vulpix, like Arceus variants might go back to playing the Alolan Vulpix or Chien Pao as well. Maybe you might start playing it to attempt to counter Mirror. Then it's going to be really nice that you have that Mewtwo V Union versus, those specific matchups. So as of right now, I think this version is tier 1. Arc, Flying Pika, Vulpix, just Arc Box in general, I think is very strong as of right now. Duraludon is very good versus the colorless Lugia decks. You have Flying Pikachu and also Vulpix for Chien Pao, and Arceus plus things like potentially Lost City or Path are just really good combos and complementary pieces to the Arceus package as well. I think this deck is very good. Definitely think it's going to be tier 2, could even move to tier 1. I think Arceus is in the best spot it's been in quite some time. After Alex Szymanski won the European International Championships, this version kind of fell out of favor, but I do think heading into the upcoming NAIC, I think it's going to be a little bit better. So we'll put it at the top of tier 2 as of right now. I think it's very good. Arceus Giratina is arguably the best it's ever been. It now can play Iono and also Judge, so it has more ways to disrupt your opponent. Path to the Peak is just incredible in this format, with things like Chien Pao heavily relying on that Shivery Chill ability, Lugia relying on things like the Summoning Star, and then obviously Gardevoir as well, needing those abilities like Psychic Embrace. Really strong versus Lost Box decks in general as well, and it has been performing really well in Japan and I believe Taiwan as well. So as of right now, it's just an incredible deck. I think it's the best it's ever been. I definitely think it deserves its spot here. Kyurem Kyogre is a fun meme. It's definitely really fun to play. However, a little bit too inconsistent for my liking. And if players can just knock out the Kyurem early, you sometimes fall apart, and pulling out the Kyogre is pretty difficult, as you can't really reach 0 cards consistently. But I guess since you play so many energies, you can still do it. but you do play a decent amount of Pokemon and non-energies, which means that you sometimes could just discard all of them. I guess the only way to guarantee with this deck that you get the 5 energies is being able to recycle her, but still, once again, it's really hard to get to 0, so you pretty much just start simulating, just kind of like coin flip simulator, whether or not you actually get lucky on your discards or not, right? So you just kind of spin the wheel, I guess, and be like, well, I hope I hit it. But if you don't, the deck is kind of mediocre, and especially if they play things like Manaphy as well, you can't really pull it off. So it's sometimes just quad Kyurem almost. But it's a cool deck. Dialga Magnezone, it's I think the other deck in this range as well. Kind of feel bad not putting it in tier 3, but it's okay. When you get it set up, it's pretty cool, but it's really difficult to get set up. And also, if you don't get Magnet into the energies you need, your deck just it kind of doesn't work. So that's kind of the problem with the deck, but it's still good in general if you get it set up. So I guess we'll put it in tier 3 as of right now. Lugia Tyranitar, just Lugia single strike in general, is still tier 1. I think it's the best Lugia variant as of right now. Tyranitar is amazing versus Lost Box. Single strike Urshifu is very, very good versus the Arceus variants. Lugia is just a great attacker in general, and it's going to be your engine to set up Archeopsis too. So that's really important. Lugia, still incredibly powerful. Definitely one of the best decks in the format. Still, Lugia, going to be at the top. Anyways, going through some of the other Lost Zone variants, we got a bunch of them. We're at Giratina. Giratina's, I think, tier 3. I think it's the worst out of the Lost Box variants, but still respectable. All the other Lost Box variants are just pretty rough for it, except for Goodra. Goodra, I do think, is going to be tier 3. The problem with Goodra is that Chien Pao just can blow it up, and also things like Duraludon naturally hit well into it, Single Strike Urshifu naturally hit well into it, and also decks like Gardevoir as well just hit so positively into Goodra, which is the big problem that the deck has as of right now. So when it comes to this, I think Goodra is tier 3. As of right now, especially because Chien Pao is, I think, going to be really popular at the beginning of the format. So anyways, moving on to single strike, or not single strike, single prize Lost Box here. We have the Kyogre variant. Now with single prize, I guess we'll consider this Kyogre Zamazenta, as that's the main single prize one, and I think this deck is very good. I think single prize is really, really strong as of right now. I think it's a tier 1 deck. The Lugia matchup is admittedly very scary. However, you hit incredibly well into Chien Pao. Zamazenta healing or dealing the perfect 220 is really, really good for that, which is why I think that's the single prize variant is going to see a lot of play, because it just hits naturally perfectly into Chien Pao, which is really, really nice. And then you do pretty okay versus all the Gardevoir variants and stuff like that. Just in general, Iono is kind of a problem though now, so you need to kind of develop your board state a little bit differently, maybe getting 3 or 4 Comfeys on the field rather than getting maybe just 1 or 2 on the field. The Mewtwo Union is though a very big issue though, so if more people start to play the Mewtwo Union over just the regular version, then single prize might fall down. However, I do think that this variant is still very, very strong. Lost Box of Sky Seal Stone is a tier 2 deck, still very good. I just think it's just worse than the 4 Seal Stone ones in general. Turbo Kyogre, I also think it deserves its spot in tier 1 as well. Iono is a problem, but 4 Seal Stone does pretty good against it. I think it's a little bit better than the single prize variant as well, just because it's a little bit more consistent and quick. So I do like that. And then the Turbo one, the one with like trekking shoes or just all in turbo, I do think is strong, but I don't think it's necessarily as powerful as the other variants. I think we'll move both of these below here, as I do think that they're just kind of inferior Lost Box decks to the other two. Charizard is actually kind of good now in this format. I think this is another tier 2 deck, because since Iono is such a popular card, your deck just needs to do less. You just need a Clara to pretty much attack, whereas a lot of these other decks kind of have to go leaps and bounds through tons of different complicated strategies to be able to attack, especially with things like the Kyogre, whereas the Charizard one's just like, okay, I'll use Clara and basically get my full attack off. So that's, I think, a big reason as to why the Charizard version does actually have some merit moving forward. Mew DTE is in a very interesting spot as of right now. I have been playing the deck quite a bit in the previous format, and I definitely think it's a tier 1 deck. However, now with things like Spiritomb coming out, Drapion still being pretty popular, Gardevoir becoming even better than it was, I think that it is a tier 2 deck and not tier 1 anymore. It still is very strong. I guess the big thing that we just don't know is how popular Spiritomb is going to be, which I guess is a big reason as to why people have been trying to play the Fusion variant, as I think Fusion is the best way to play it as of right now, because of Spiritomb, you can play the Ice Cube to snipe Spiritomb, and also you can attach Fusion energies onto your Genesect, which means that you can then be using your Fusion Strike system, which is pretty good. So I think that Fusion is still going to be tier 1. Decks are kind of slow right now and also a little bit inconsistent, specifically Chien Pao, which means that you can really take advantage of that with things like turn 1 Melodious Echo. So Fusion Mew tier 1 has been performing really well overseas, so definitely very, very strong in general. Control is a big question mark as of right now. I know it gained some pretty cool cards in the new set, so we're going to put it at the top of tier 3. However, it's Control. It's always a deck that can take advantage of players that might not necessarily know exactly how to play versus the deck, but does struggle against players that know exactly just what to do versus Control in general. So tier 3 as of right now, I think it's a cool deck. Definitely has some potential, and maybe someone will come up with a Control deck. Sander Wojcik, one of the most notable Control players, I think is going to NAIC, so maybe they'll decide to cook up some spicy Control deck in general. But anyways, I'm excited to see exactly what happens, because as the new cards and new sets and stuff like that, get released, the Control always gets a little bit better as we start to get more and more cards in the card pool. The bigger the card pool typically is good for something like Control. Anyways, Miraidon Raichu, top of tier 3. It's a cool deck in general, hits really quickly, very, very strong in general. However, it does just kind of get overwhelmed by a lot of the single prize decks, especially Gardevoir is also not a great matchup as well anymore, especially because they can focus attacking more with things also like the Shining Arcana and Gardevoir. Things like Mew Meloetta is not a great matchup as well. Judge Path can be pretty difficult. However, if you do get fully set up, it is pretty strong in general. The Turbo Cramorant version, I guess, is just another deck that kind of should be in tier 3. It's pretty much just Miraidon in general, just kind of all gas, no brakes. It's okay. Swirl and Empoleon, I don't actually think the Scroll of Swirls, I don't think it's necessarily super good. Empoleon just on its own is not necessarily a great attacker. It's good versus Lost Box, however, you don't play versus those and you just play against decks that are able to set up. You're not necessarily super strong in general, and that kind of goes for Solrock Lunatone as well. Urshifu and Teleon is a good deck with bad matchups. I think that's a big thing about it. It's a very, very strong deck. However, its matchup pool is not great. It has some really cool combos that it can pull off. But I do think that with Lugia being so popular, especially with another color, just another Lugia variant coming out now, it's going to take up a percentage of the metagame. It's just really, really struggles versus those. So as of right now, we'll put that at top of tier 3. Could move in the bottom of tier 2 because it is a good deck. It just doesn't necessarily have great matchups. Single prize Chien Pao is more or less the water box variant. I prefer the regular one with Palkia a little bit more, but I do think that this one might have some merit. This is the one I necessarily haven't put a whole lot of games into, but I have kind of theory crafted some lists, and I do think that it is okay. I just don't necessarily know if it's better than this version of Chien Pao. So as of right now, I think we'll put it at tier 2. If there's a tier 2.5, I would probably go in that. But as of right now, I think it does deserve its spots around here. Things like Radiant Greninja are still really powerful. Kyogre as well is really good. And you still can play, things like Chien Pao as well. Just having that, one-shot option is still very good. But anyways, that is my tier list. Let me know what you think of this list in the comments. Let me know if there's anything I might have missed as well. But with that being said, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, helps me out as a creator. If you're looking for cards, make sure to go check out the Dead Draw Gaming website. Go check that out, and the link will be in the description. But anyways, that's it for me today. I'll be back with some more Paldea Evolved content. This is Smart TCG, and I'll speak with you again soon. Peace out. If you're looking to improve your game, I do offer coaching on Metafy. I'm currently ranked in the top 10 players in North America, and I know what it takes to reach that level. If you're interested in just finding out exactly what coaching is, I do offer a free consultation here where you can book it and we can kind of go over whether or not coaching is something for you. I do also offer training packages, which are just bundled sessions on top of the individual sessions as well. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM on any of my socials or post it in the comments, and I'll make sure to get back to you. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll speak with you again soon. Peace out.